Hey, how's it going?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Doing well. I'm in the ringer right now.
Why?
I'm in some drama on TikTok.
Really?
Yeah. Culture war bullshit.
Well, that's good because half of this episode is going to be about culture war bullshit. I knew I came to the right place,
I
baby. I knew it.
know, that's what it's about. No, it's so fucking exhausting. Dude, this guy with like 500,000 followers is like on my ass.
Beefing with you?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
It's
You
a
should have a
lot of
debate with him.
fun.
Bring him here.
I asked
Summon
him to. I said it. He was like, no, I will not go live. I will not speak about this. I will only communicate via messenger pigeons by, making a TikTok and then just tagging you in it.
Is he conservative?
No. He's bullying people in like under the guise of progressivism, and it
Cool.
pissed me off.
Of course. No, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, if you're going to pick a fight with anybody in this political climate, you might as well pick a fight with somebody on the left.
No. Come on.
Perfect.
Come on.
No. Listen. Hey. Listen.
This is such
I'm
bullshit.
not picking on you. I'm not whatever, It makes
No,
sense.
I do think, especially in this moment.
What up, Alex?
Hey, are we live already? I thought we were just testing. Okay.
Yeah, we are testing. Did you not want to go live? Well, let me tell you, we've been live this entire time.
That's so chill. It's totally fine.
By the way, for those of you who didn't miss it, you can go back and watch the VOD. But before Hunter sat down, he has a G-string on at the moment, so you'll get a bit of a show.
Hey, yo,
what up?
Thank you.
Hey, Sharon.
Thank you.
So walk me through as we wait for people to file in. Because we technically start at 1 p.m. So in about 14 minutes, we've got time to like banter and like to catch up and stuff like that. Fill me in.
Fill you in. Okay. Yeah. So, dude, it's so complicated. It's been such a long conversation. This is why we need to stream to TikTok, because I've got so much activity going on there right now.
What have I said? I've been the one.
That was you who said we gotta go live so that we can trigger the.
And you're like, yeah, sure. Never hear from you again. Oh my god, I'd love to go live, but I gotta play Magic the Gathering. Have you seen the Magic the Gathering picture behind me? It's so cool. I love wizards.
It's not a wizard. That's an instant spell. Okay, you dumbass.
Hey, have you played Sidebar? This is relevant though. Magic the Gathering makes me think of nerdery and wizards. Have you played the new Baldur's Gate game that just came out?
No, I don't play a lot of video games.
What was I thinking? I apologize. You're right.
No, it's okay. Look, that's a fair assumption. I didn't say that you were completely in the wrong. Just like, just for your information, I don't play a ton of video games.
Why?
I don't know.
Scoot your chair up or whatever. Like last week, it was perfect where we were like asymmetrical, but you're always like at half mast compared to me, which I suppose is where you belong. But
facts.
All right, now, but for real. So why are you beefing with people?
I'm beefing with people because complicated story, but basically this person who there's this girl named Hannah on TikTok and this guy named Florian on TikTok. Okay, this is culture war bullshit that doesn't really matter, but I do feel like it was kind of not really okay, and I just threw my hat in the ring. Basically, Hannah was like, hey, she's just like cute girl, like Instagram aesthetic, but she was also like, she did braids one time and everyone was like, hey, that's cultural appropriation. She goes, okay, gotcha. How do I not appropriate culture? And like, you're gonna have to choose a thing.
Wait, can you hear an echo right now?
No, I cannot.
Okay, keep going.
You're nailing it.
Thank you.
You're like gonna have to connect with something that is actually in your culture. You're gonna have to like cite experts. You're gonna have to listen to Romani voices and prop them up. I said Romani because that's the culture that she is actually a part of. So then she did this thing, and then Florian was this guy with like 500,000 followers was just like, no, you're appropriating my culture. She's just this white girl who's just trying to take our culture. And she's like, she's got all of these like sources like, hey guys, here's what I learned about and he's like, no, you're white. You can't do this. And she was like, well, it's in my heritage. Like, sure, I look white, but it's like, like 3-4 generations back. And basically she got like 500,000 people just got on her ass and she had to leave TikTok. And like, she like all of her posts got taken down and accounts. And I was like,
Wait, she was reported off TikTok,
No,
or
she voluntarily left because of the harassment.
but
And
she
I was like,
deleted all of her own videos?
no, well, kind of. No, not all of her videos. It's still up, but she's just like, she posted a video like, "Hey, I'm stepping out." It was just like a black screen. It was like a kind of like a notes app kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I was like, it sucks that people who are genuinely trying to connect and trying to learn and trying to care feel like they're being bullied off of progressive spaces because they're fucking not just someone I'm beefing
Who is
with on
Stax talking
TikTok.
about?
We'll get over this as soon as we actually get to the live show. We're just waiting for people to get in. So I'm just talking about culture war nonsense that doesn't matter.
We start at 1 p.m. and so we give people plenty of time to like show up and try to get our commanding audience of 12 people. And then
10 of which come from you.
Yeah, 10 of which are basically
the other
my
2 are
alts.
me.
Yeah,
hitting myself and then sure.
Yeah. So he was filling me in on some TikTok beef. You got to remember that Stax is hot shit on TikTok. Now he refuses to come to YouTube.
What is this?
He did put out a really good video a couple of weeks ago, which we talked about. It's called "Is a Hot Dog a Sandwich?" A rebuttal to Matt Walsh's "What is a Woman?" Because Matt Walsh is an idiot and a dangerous idiot who should be humiliated and refuted at all times. It's a really good video that Stax did. You should check it out.
It's on YouTube.
It is on YouTube
and not on TikTok. I'm trying to move. I'm trying to move over.
You're trying to move. The absolute minimum effort. You put out 2 videos in 7 years. Okay, so I don't want to hear it. Meanwhile, you're probably on TikTok right now. You're probably putting out.
First off, I'm streaming on YouTube and not TikTok right now.
The only reason you're not streaming on TikTok right now is because when I've asked you to go live, so we can stream simultaneously, you're like, I can't.
No. Wait, hold on. You're moving the goalpost. That what I'm trying to say is, of course, I care about YouTube and not TikTok because I'm not making any efforts to try to stream this.
I understand.
I'm
just moving the goalpost wherever I need to in order.
That's
to
fair.
You. Okay.
I respect it.
But anyway,
I respect it.
So again, we've got 9 minutes. So fill me in. So I want to recap since I'm the layman here, since I'm basically the Watson. The John Watson to your Sherlock
Here,
Holmes.
let's have you take a take, and maybe I should back off. I don't know.
No. So I just want to recap. This we're talking about TikTok creators. There was a TikTok creator named Hannah, who is like 4 generations back Romani, and she was either dressing or having the hairstyle.
She wanted the hairstyle, and she was like, "Hey, I've been told that I'm appropriating culture, but I was also told the way to do this is to use your own heritage and to use voices and to make sure you know your history and you're aware of the culture and you."
And she did.
And she did. And then it's like still appropriation.
And
I'm
Florian
like, and I'm
Romani.
Like, what? Yes.
And he has 500,000 followers on TikTok. Substantially larger than hers, about the size of yours, basically. and he was bullying her. He was like, no, you're actually appropriating.
But it was like, culture. It was so obnoxious because it was like, I'm not bullying, I'm just educating. And then he would just call her like the fucking like this like white chic, awful white woman who's appropriating my culture, and then saying nothing about like he's not like I would. All I want is just the bare effort of just like, do not harass this creator. That's it. That's all I am looking for. He made no comments when she got bullied off the app. And I was just like, why are we doing this weird fucking like attacking people who are clearly interested and aware of and conscientious of their actions? Why are we turning our like what? It's so weird. It's so weird. It feels like a weird bullying tactic.
It is weird.
And it's so gross.
It is gross. I'll get into your, I'll ask you about your response in a minute. But one of the things, because it's not like this stuff doesn't happen, but the reason that I don't dwell on it is because here's the thing. Cody Johnson had this great tweet. I don't know. I tried to find it. I think he may have deleted it, but it's like, basically he was making fun of the idea that the left,
Dave Rubin.
Well, yeah,
I think I know what tweet you're talking about.
That the left.
Where he's like, I used to care about the left until they
bullied me,
and now I changed all my
right.
Yeah.
So hopefully, this Hannah person does.
She took it really well. She went on Instagram and she said, "Look, I just can't be on TikTok, but Florian reached out, and I'm going to try and do better, and I'm going to try to do all of these things, and like I appreciate everyone's comments and stuff like that. Please." Leave me alone. That's basically all she said. Like she's not trying. Like I feel like I'm maybe stirring the pot is a fair way to put it. I would, maybe that's the negative way to put it, but I feel like the positive is like, hey, can we please stop harassing every single goddamn person who's trying to make I don't know. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's very puritanical and gatekeepy and stuff like
Yeah.
that and cringe based on what you're telling me.
Uh-huh.
I've taken the position that if and when I ever get criticized by somebody who claims to be more progressive than I am, which is entirely possible that might happen,
Mhm.
I look forward to frustrating them immensely because I will, number one, I will not leave. And number two, I will not waver from my positions. I'm that person like, listen, even if you hate me, I'm going to be an ally to you, whether you like
For
it or
sure.
not, which will drive you nuts. It's actually like double layered. Not only am I
We have
doing the
different
right thing,
approaches for sure.
but I'm doing the right thing in a way that is absolutely spiteful to you. Like
Yeah.
if other progressives want to run from, they're like, listen, for whatever reason, I can't. I mean, again, I'm not sure what take I've ever had that would ever drive them to do that. But if it ever happens, we want nothing. We disavow you. Like, no. I'm still a friend, whether you like it or not. So
I think
hopefully she will. What you should do is inspire her to take that approach. You should reach out to her and be like, Hannah, you're going about
no,
this all wrong.
she's way too timid and just like
No.
you could very well tell that like she does not want this pot stirred and she's like, please just I will accept my mistakes and then get out of here. Please, everyone leave me alone. And I'm like, can we please leave her alone?
I
And like,
remember now that I think about it, I think there was only one time that I can think of where I was kind of in a position where somebody like tried to attack me from more left than me. And it was at the beginning of the year when
you've never like debated a communist or anything?
no, because, and I'll tell you, here's why.
Really?
So here's my secret.
Uh-huh.
I focus on
Here's
bad
my
people who actually have power, like conservatives. So that's the difference between us.
Yeah, but like
You will go communist hunting like you would not
oh
believe.
please.
You're
I
like,
live
oh my
on
God,
TikTok.
Republican. I better pick on those who actually don't have. I used to follow this person, but then I purged the list of people I follow just because like,
Oh, have some respect.
well, just because
Unbelievable.
like I like to have my Twitter feed consigned mostly to like news sources because it makes it easier to curate and like a
No,
handful
look,
of people.
hey,
Shut up. I'm talking now. And a handful of people that like are not part of the news, but like you that I follow because we're friends. And her
okay.
name was Barbarism Critic. She's like a
Mhm.
really big, I think you've seen her on Twitter. She's like this really big outspoken communist who thinks like Joe Biden's the devil. And she's kind of like of the Brianna Joy Gray approach. We've had a couple of pleasant exchanges, but I remember at one point she was complaining that Democrats were picking on communists. And she's like, I don't even know why people do this because communists don't have any power. And I even spoke up and I said, yeah, listen, I disagree with you on quite a bit. I don't agree with your views on President Biden and the Democrats. And I said, but the reason that I don't go after you in that respect and pick fights with you is because, relatively speaking, your views are small potatoes. They're nothing in
Fair.
comparison to what's going on with the fascistic right. So that's okay. One day you'll learn. One day you'll learn.
No, like all I'll say is that I should be aware of the influence that I have,
On
of where I
TikTok, it's
exist on
incredible.
TikTok.
I mean, my God, you're
No,
basically
shut the fuck up.
no,
No,
no.
look, you are right, and I'm not critical of your approach.
Tell me
But
that again. Tell me that
I'm
again.
saying
I'm
you're not
what?
right.
What am I?
You're not wrong in your approach.
Okay.
But I don't think I'm wrong either. I think I'm sort of saying,
You're
hey,
less
look,
right. That's all that matters in the end.
the people who I'm living like we do live in a democracy, right? And there's two kind of aspects to the democracy, whereas like you have to get the overwhelming surge of people, and then you also have to be very incisive and careful and direct and specific with your politics, if that makes sense. And I think you focus on the latter. You're like, look, I don't really care about getting people on the things. We have at least a good amount of numbers. Now let's be really fucking brutal with our politics and just make sure the Democrats do as much as they humanly can. And I'm like, that's dope. Please keep doing that. But I'm over here like, we should also get more people though.
Yeah.
And more
No.
people will get your thing to happen too.
I
and
agree.
The more and agree, and it's also a mutualistic where when they do better, yeah, exactly. When Democrats do better and get more shit done, then you're gonna have more people on my side. So it's like
I agree.
it's a beautiful
I
little
think
process.
it is. It's good cop, bad cop. It's cop,
That's
it's
true.
cop that prioritizes stuff that matters, and then there's you. Oh my God, this communist said this one thing, but they have no power. Nobody cares. But
Please.
no, I get it. No, for real.
I do think that
No.
I do think that there is a perspective that is very, very, very common when talking about progressives, where it does seem like we're bullying under the guise of progressivism very often.
Sure.
And towards people who probably shouldn't be fucking bullied, who don't need to be.
No,
and I think you have the perspective of these people shouldn't leave the left, and I'm having the perspective of saying, well, they also do, and people do feel that way, even if it's stupid. So maybe we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, no. There's kidding aside, there's this like fine line to walk, because on the one hand, like I said, my approach is, it will be a cold day in hell before someone ever bullies me out of the left.
Oh,
like, it
for
does,
sure.
Come hell or high water, I'll die on that hill.
Sure.
Again, I will be the leech that clings to the left, no matter how much they want to get rid of me. No,
absolutely.
No, Josiah says he likes Biden. It's not communist enough. I don't care, baby. I'm an ally, whether you like it or not. 100%. It's you and me against the fascists. But
100%.
But a lot of people, I understand, a lot of people wrongly
don't have that perspective.
Yes, wrongly. But to your point too, it's almost like, yes, that's a problem, but also the immediate problem is, if they're leaving, then they're not going to develop the thick skin to stay no matter what. So I get it. So let's see here. Oh, let's first start with Gunsmoke here. Gunsmoke says, Sax, I saw it. It was great. Although I wish you had an elaborate getup, a costume and mask for it. He did have his, I call his work uniform because he works in a meth lab. He had that on for the first part. But yeah, see, you've got Gunsmoke.
I think he was, I think he was talking about my TikTok. Not everyone's just on YouTube all the time.
Oh, that's right.
I could be wrong.
Oh, are you on TikTok? I had no idea.
I think
it's not like you mention it every 7 minutes. Our buddy Cypher, who was a guest on this thing.
Oh, this is Cypher. Gotcha.
Yeah. Amit Serper. It's Latin for Cypher. It's not. I have no idea what it is.
Oh, I'm gonna look it up.
This is so silly. JFC, the hairstyle police.
Facts.
It is silly. And then Gunsmoke says, the worst thing I feel that's happening right now is progressives are bullying libs for having softer positions on niche culture war issues. Yeah, that is a problem. That's why. So it's funny. The last thing I'll say on this particular subject, because we will talk about BS culture war stuff at the 45-minute mark. Okay. Maybe even sooner than that.
Culture war.
I know. I understand. As soon as I say policy, you like skitter up the wall backwards like Linda Blair in The Exorcist.
What is that?
But yeah, you're like, policy.
Let me just get mad at people.
Yeah, exactly. But the last thing I'll say on this is, for example, like the closest thing to like a recent culture war thing that I've gotten into.
Cypher is so fucking spitting right now.
Also, as an immigrant to the USA. Yeah, well, hang on. No. Listen.
You go. That's fine.
Now you go ahead. Now you can read it. We had to pull it up.
Also, as an immigrant to the USA, I thought the whole point of the country was the amalgamation of cultures. 100%. 100%. It's something so beautiful about this country. And now, like, because very often I'm like, I'm not sure if I should call myself Jewish. Like, I say this quite a bit because, like, my great-grandfather left Poland. The entire city, like, he left as a Jew. The entire city was demolished. Like, I would have been considered Jewish to Hitler. I don't know if that counts, right? But, like, I never grew up religious, and I didn't, like, my dad is also Jewish, not my mom. So, like, the Orthodox Jews wouldn't consider me Jewish. Like, I don't know sometimes. And there's this kind of like weird, like, I don't know, where like sometimes you get shamed for claiming a culture that you shouldn't. And it's like, I don't know where I should and where I shouldn't, and that's a hard balance sometimes.
I'm not Jewish, but my position would be, it pisses Ben Shapiro off. So I would say continue to do it.
Yeah, no, and I don't know how he feels about it, but I will say that, like,
I'm pretty sure, I'm 90% sure he
gets pissed if
with people
your mom is
who are not
Jewish.
Well, if you're not a practicing Jew in terms of religion, my understanding is that's when he doesn't like that, because I can't remember what the specifics were, but it was something about criticizing Israel or something like that, and the Jewish
he's called a lot of Democratic Jews like traitors.
That's what it is. That's what I'm talking about. So,
dude, my dad fucking no, I've never seen my dad more angry at a human being in my life, like,
than Ben Shapiro.
What?
Then your dad
when he was respond? Yes, correct. Just like, because he's a Democratic Jew, like.
Gotcha. Wow.
Anyway,
so the last thing I'll say on that particular culture war thing is, maybe, I'm telling you should reach out to her. You should get her back on TikTok, man. Be like, listen, hey, you've got people who are stalwartly defending your inquisitiveness, and disagree with this Florian guy, and So let's see. Cypher says, you are right. I'm originally from Israel. I'm a total atheist. Ben Shapiro would totally hate me. LOL. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Chatula says, Stacks, you're just not due to halacha, which is the, I believe it's the Talmud, but I don't know what, I feel like those are interchangeable, but I feel like there's probably got to be some nuance between them. It's like Jewish law or whatever, but like a lot of it is like very like not a lot of Jews follow them completely, because like there's a lot like where like a lot of interpretations are like you can't drive on a Saturday on the Sabbath, and like tons of Jews.
I feel like members of every religion does like do that. Like,
no,
how many Christians are like devout and consistent practitioners of the Bible cover to cover?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a lot of like give and take, and sometimes it's really weird and hard. And I think a lot of people, especially Americans, where we're like very intergenerational and we have a lot of mixes. Like I can also pivot. I can also pivot. Yeah, I see I see comments like this and I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, honestly. And where I'm like, I feel divorced from this culture, but I also feel like, okay, my family was persecuted and completely stripped of their identity and forced to relocate. And I wonder why that's why I don't fucking know what this is, right? It's because I was divorced from that community. So it was weird. But I think a lot of white Americans, especially, or maybe not white Americans, just Americans in general, with so many different ancestors, feel like kind of this conflict of identity and history and culture. And I think I think it extends a little bit more outside of culture war, where it's like this does have to do with people's identities that matter a little bit more than just I would say it's a little bit more important than culture war.
A little bit. Yeah. Cool. All right. So first things first. We're going to talk about two things today. The first thing we're going to talk about is Donald Trump's third indictment, his second federal indictment, and probably just the midpoint of the indictments to come, because he's probably going to get hit with one out of Fulton County, Georgia, for election interference. And the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, is preparing to sue the Trump organization. And if she's successful, it will effectively kill the Trump organization's operations in New York. And that being like the ancestral nexus of the Trump organization would be a decisive blow against Trump. And I say, bring it on. I mean, to whatever extent it is legal, I say bury this MF in 100%. Legal challenges. Do what must be done. So the one that we're going to talk about is
I do love that a lot of Republicans especially have said things like, wow, it seems to be coming from left and right. Like everyone's using almost any sort of means to get this guy. It seems politically motivated. It's like, can we also maybe entertain the idea that maybe he's a criminal who won't stop doing crimes?
Yeah. So
there's a lot to catch him on, because there's a lot that he's done.
Yeah. So first things first. Chatula, thanks, buddy. The super chat isn't much, but I've been watching you guys for a while now, and I've loved your content. Keep it up. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the support we can possibly get. So what's interesting about that, I've always found that particular claim unpersuasive, because let's say I grant the premise that the Department of Justice really doesn't like Donald Trump. To me, that only matters if, number one, it's not warranted, and number two, the actions they're taking against him are unjustified.
Totally.
Like, it's okay if a cop hates your guts as long as he's not breaking the law or, fudging evidence against you. That's effectively what it is here. If the Department of Justice hates Donald Trump's given them sufficient reason to do so, which is justified. So to me, the issue is only, are they breaking the law to try to get him? And is their dislike of him merited? And the answer to these questions, yes. Their dislike of him is completely justified. Number two, if it exists. Number two, they're not breaking the law or bending the law to try to get him. What's the issue with that?
I don't know how I feel about that yet. I'm a little conflicted, I will be honest, but I will say that
about what?
Well, I've been. I don't want to just draw an analogy. I don't want to. Well, shut the fuck up.
No, please.
No, I was. God damn it. No, I was listening to this song that I really love. And maybe you'll say this is disanalogous, okay? But I was thinking a lot about this. Just shut the
No, did you say song?
Oh, okay. Yes, it's a song.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry.
Yes. It's by J. Cole. It's called Neighbors. And basically what he's saying is the conversation that he's having is his neighbors think he's selling dope. He's dealing, right? And like he's just like saying all of the neighbors, like they just look at me just because he lives in this very like white affluent neighborhood because he's a very successful rapper and everyone just thinks that he is. So the cops kind of like come in and like start investigating, and he is. Right. And that's like kind of the frustration that he's
but wait a minute.
No, but here's the thing. Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine. That's fine. Wait, hold on.
No. You gave me an opportunity. You listen. Okay. I want to clarify because I think there's a wild misunderstanding. Okay. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
If a cop guesses that you might be doing a bad thing, presumably there's a racist component to what's going on in that song. If they just assume,
no, it is. It's explicitly
dealing
racist.
It's explicitly racist. But that's not okay. They're not
okay. Well, why is that disanalogous?
Because they're not going.
If you have pre-held,
shut your mouth. They're not targeting Donald Trump, or the predicate to their suspicion of Donald Trump has nothing to do with an immutable characteristic like race or sex or religion or anything. There's no bigotry motivating or factoring in to the Department of Justice scrutinizing Donald Trump's activities. That's the difference. So let me clarify.
Okay.
Allow me to clarify.
Sure.
If law enforcement scrutinizes you in part because they're bigoted, that is completely indefensible. That's not acceptable.
Okay.
You should not be scrutinized for totality or even in part because of bigotry. What Donald Trump is being scrutinized for are perfectly substantive reasons related to his character.
Well,
he's a corrupt, narcissistic person who has indicated publicly that he has violated the law, which merits the scrutiny, which has caused them to scrutinize, which allowed them to find the basis for it. That's justified.
I have a question then. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So before I ask the question, I actually want to re-clarify my position just so that I'm not taken out of context. I do not think that there is this bias in the justice system, and I think all attacks on Trump are warranted. However, I'm engaging with your point, which your point is, who cares if they are? I think I might have a problem if they were politically motivated. And I have a question for you. What if a cop, it's not for bigoted reasons. He went to high school with this guy, right? And when he there's a cop and there's some guy he sees on the street, okay, and he recognizes him, and he went, you know what? He kind of was shitty, right? And he was kind of mean to me, and he kind of just kind of shit on, like he kind of stole my girlfriend, some weird personal reason, right? And he looks at him and he goes, fuck that guy. I bet he's a criminal. And then you heavily persecute and check on this guy. And it turns out he did do something, and you arrest him. Was that bad?
Yeah, because number one, that would be, well, for a variety of reasons. Number one, that would be related to interpersonal conflict that, number one, predates the issue, number one, right? You're talking about behaviors that went on in high school. Okay, so you're talking about time. You're talking about the personal nature of the conflict. That's also not analogous to what's going on with Donald
Trump. I think it is, but continue.
How is it?
So let's say we are saying politically motivated, right? So we're saying, what if my issue with Trump, I work in the Justice Department now. My issue with Trump is actually, you know what? I just what's a kind of benign reason to dislike him? Or maybe you're just like, sorry, I'm thinking of all the harsh reasons to dislike Trump. But what if you're just like, nah, he's a Republican, and I think that I really want welfare, right? So I kind of want to get after this guy because I think it'll cripple the Republican Party. That predates.
That's not acceptable.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, sorry. Then I think I misunderstood your point because I thought I
did.
Okay, then that's on me. I apologize, because what I thought you were saying is that if they are politically motivated, and I would think that is a reason to go after someone, that is a political motivation, the one that I just described.
If you're in the Department of Justice and you target a Democrat or a Republican simply because you want them to lose and the opposition to win because they are misaligned with you politically, that is wrong. That's an abuse of power.
Okay, but then they investigate and everything is 100% true, right?
Yeah, no.
Even
then, here's the thing. So, it could be a situation where you still bring the charges because once you found the evidence, you just can't ignore it, right? As long as the evidence was lawfully obtained. It's not like
but we should still criticize that, right?
You can do both. You can simultaneously
of course. But I don't think you were doing both, is what I'm saying. Given, and I might be misunderstanding what you're saying. Everyone can can call me out what I heard you say. But why did you say who cared? Essentially, I'm gonna try to quote you, but I could be wrong here. You said something to the effect of,
I'm saying who cares if they dislike him? If the
no, but I care if they dislike him, because if they're like, no, I kind of just want to go after this guy. And then
wait a minute. No. Listen.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I want you to close your pie hole and open your ears and listen very carefully. Okay. Yeah, exactly. You shut that pie.
I want to be clear, okay, Alex. There has
listen
not,
to me.
And
no,
I agree. No, I need to respond to this shit. There is not.
No. Alex is making my point.
No, it's mine too.
No, wait. You shut your mouth. Listen, Stacks. Is it possible to dislike somebody and that person also give you probable cause to investigate them? That's what happened with Trump. I don't care if they dislike him.
I agree.
That's the point.
Gotcha.
It doesn't matter if they dislike him as long as they gave him probable cause.
But I don't think that that's political.
These two things are not mutually exclusive. These two things,
no, that's fine.
Sometimes douchebags give law enforcement probable cause to go after them, and that's Donald Trump.
I would not.
So fuck him.
Jesus Christ. I would not say that that's political motivation, though. That is probable cause.
They do. No, wait a minute. They do. What they're saying is
it's political motivation. If you just happen to dislike them, but you have probable cause and you act on it.
They're trying. Republicans and their surrogates try to conflate the issue. They're saying this is wrong because the Department of Justice is biased against Donald Trump. Perhaps they are, but that's not mutually exclusive to the idea that Donald Trump gave them probable cause to go after them. That's the point. They're muddying the waters.
Motivation. I wouldn't call it.
They do.
Well, then disagree with that. Don't say who cares if they have political motivation. Say they don't.
I'm saying I don't care if they do dislike him as long as there's probable cause.
Christ.
That's the point.
Goalposts.
Jesus. Oh my God. No, you just have to be completely agnostic when it comes to the subject
of
an investigation. At all.
Wait, hold on.
You idiot.
Just hold on. You agree with me. Okay. You agree with me. Here.
That disliking someone is not in and of itself a predicate for an investigation, and I would criticize if it was. Of course. That's not what I'm saying.
I know that's not what you're saying. That's not what I'm saying either, though.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, what I would consider political motivation is if you do not have probable cause, you act and you find a crime. That is bad. We agree, correct?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
There's no probable cause. The impetus to the investigation or the action of law enforcement is simply because you dislike.
Perfect. Let's take that point by point. Let's take this point by point. Do you think that's a fair assessment of the term political motivation?
I would.
Okay, great. That's fine. Now let's say, sorry.
Because Alex is getting it. Alex right here is getting it. Alex,
I know. I agree with Alex, though. That's the big thing. Okay. Wait.
Alex agrees with me. Right. That's my point. Okay. Alex is saying Republicans are trying to distract from probable cause.
Right, because we're having a fight. And
Alex is wait a minute. Alex is clearly yes.
Lying to Trump supporters because no Trump supporter that I know read indictments.
Thank you.
Reports and believe of course, I agree with that, though.
Yes.
Wait, hold on. But I'm saying if someone says, "Hey, the bureau, the FBI, right?"
You're so on culture war issues. You don't even know what the FBI stands for. You're like that bureau.
Pause. Yeah. If someone says, "Hey, Jack Smith is politically motivated," the answer is no. No, he is not. The answer is not. I don't care. That is all I'm saying. Sure. He is not politically motivated.
I'm saying
because he has probable cause, and that is a good enough fucking reason. President. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying the point that they're trying to make is they're making the claim that the Department of Justice doesn't like Trump, which is why they're going after him. But I'm saying I don't care if they dislike him as long as they have probable cause. That's it. And I don't think we disagree. I think you got tripped up and you fell for the Republican talking point. That's just, yeah.
Stacks is debating a semantic point. I kind of agree with this.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will say it's
what he does. He can't help it. He's the most contrarian person in the world. Let me tell you something.
I take it back. I
hung out with him and his girlfriend and Jordan when we were canvassing in Georgia, and this man would disagree on it. The GPS would say turn right, and he's like, no, turn left. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. He would always want to turn right.
Because I'm right leaning. That's the joke, everyone.
All right, can we move on now? Now that I've made that it's okay to hate Donald Trump as long as you have probable cause.
Just know that I'm right, and we're gonna move on as if I'm right. Continue.
I agree that you are right-leaning. Okay, so now that we have established that fact. Oh, by the way, I got to read this out here. The Devin Archer video you did was very good, Josiah. I could taste the Magateers. Yes, that whole thing, bro. Stacks, have you thought about Hunter Biden's laptop?
Who the fuck cares? I'm so sorry.
Exactly. That's correct. Devin
Who
Archer.
Is Devin Archer? Former business
Hunter
partner.
Biden.
I'm sorry. Yeah, show me a fucking indictment. Show me an actual goddamn reason to care, and I'll care. Like until I get to that point,
Here's the thing: the investigation. Wait a minute. During the testimony. Okay. Listen. During the testimony, Devin Archer said repeatedly he had no knowledge of any sort of business entanglements between Joe and Hunter Biden. And that Hunter Biden said repeatedly he couldn't influence his dad on foreign policy or anything like that. He couldn't make any commitments. He also said that he had no knowledge of any sort of bribes that were directed to Joe Biden or anything like that. So clearly, Joe Biden's guilty.
Facts. Well, clearly, the conspiracy reaches so much further than we thought.
That's right. You don't understand. Evidence against the conspiracy is actually proof of the conspiracy.
Have you ever seen that? It's so real. There's a comic where like this like person like goes up to heaven, right, and meets God, and he's like, "Wow, God, why did you let so many people lie about that the Holocaust never happened?" And God goes, "What are you talking about, my son? Of course the Holocaust happened." And the guy thinks, "Oh wow, this conspiracy reaches further than I thought."
Yeah. No, I have not seen that, but that's hilarious. Yeah. They got to God, they got to the G-man.
It's like, oh, it hurts a little bit. It does hurt a little bit.
It should hurt.
Oh,
all right,
man.
are you ready now?
No, I just don't. I cannot care about Hunter Biden's laptop. I'm sorry. I haven't looked a single moment into it.
You should. You shouldn't care.
So I know that Marjorie Taylor Greene showed Hunter's dick pics or pixelated images on the congressional floor. That's all I know.
It was redacted. The shaft
like blurred,
was
right?
Redacted. Yeah. It was, but everything
you
saw
pretty obvious what we were looking at.
You saw the V of his pelvis and other participants and whatever act there. Yeah, she brought that onto the floor of the House of Representatives. So
but anywho. I thought wait, hold on, I'm confused. I thought Republicans were the party of conduct.
Well,
I don't understand.
Listen,
what is going on here?
Listen.
Consistency
is for lib cucks, okay? Consistency is, listen, when you have righteousness on your side, it's okay to be inconsistent.
You can bully Obama for not wearing a tan suit.
Yeah.
And you can also allow dick pics.
Can you imagine if Hunter Biden, when he dropped off his laptop, was wearing a tan suit when he did it?
Holy shit, the conspiracy goes further than I thought.
As a matter of fact, we don't know that he wasn't wearing a tan suit.
That's true. We don't have the security camera footage because it's been conveniently a security camera wasn't in there.
Joe Biden got the camera footage.
Very convenient, huh?
Or made it so that a camera was never there in the first place. Anyway, so Donald Trump's third effing indictment. Are we ready now for the love of God?
Let's go. The third indictment, right? You said third? This is third, right? The first was Stormy Daniels. The second one was the nuclear documents. And this is the third, which is pertaining to the January 6th insurrection.
It is.
Amazing.
We got a guest here, guys. We've got the one, the only.
Oh my God, it's Cypher.
What up, baby?
What's going on, y'all?
How's it going?
How you guys doing?
Damn, why does he gets the cool like bottom section, like he gets the whole panoramic view there?
It's because he's got a way better setup than both of us.
No, he's definitely he's definitely got a way better setup than you.
I put both of us in it, you know.
I know that was your mistake. I've got like a teal and orange right here, okay? It's like and I'm wearing a nice like teal shirt. I've got like a wall.
I've got a window. And it's
from the window to the wall. What's up, Cypher?
What's going on, man? It's been a while.
It has been a while. In the words of, was it Stained or Creed? Where it's like, it's been a while since I could.
That was
Stained.
Stained, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I just looked it up real quick. I didn't know.
As soon as Cypher said it, you just like
I think, yeah, of course,
bandwagoned over him. Yeah,
I knew that.
Yeah. So Cypher, he runs a channel called Crowdsource Politics. He also where we were in Austin when you and I met. I almost said Atlanta. You were not there for the Atlanta canvassing. You were there for the Austin Destiny event.
Correct.
Where we heckled Jack Posobiec and Alex Jones.
I was a bit rude.
From a 9 vodka tonics deep, man. Yeah, that was God.
I did do a little bit of drinking, but I do not blame it to the drinking. It was the atmosphere. It was just the rank bullshit fuckery that was on stage, and Destiny being the only liberal in the group, so he needed some backup.
Yeah, he did. I was hoping that I don't know. I was hoping we'd all have a chance to ask our questions. I got to ask mine of Jack Posobiec, which made me happy. But I know you and Aaron, I think we're going to go interrogate Alex Jones or somebody, and then he ended up dipping out. So
Aaron was going to do Alex Jones. I actually tried to talk to that lawyer, but I couldn't get to him. The one that I asked the question to.
Oh, the one by Posobiec?
The
one that was sitting by Posobiec? Yeah, the dude's whatever. They weren't bringing their best. They really weren't. So he has a channel called Crowdsource Politics. It's really, really good. He does his weekly. Is it still weekly roundups, or is it?
Yeah, it's weekly unless stated otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. So Stacks Cypher is also on YouTube. He does like regular YouTube content. That's the platform.
Stacks is looking at you like, I know this. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I watch his content way more than yours.
Exactly. I know you do 100%. He's like, oh yeah. No, we're trying to get Stacks off TikTok because again, all he's doing is like, it's just him and thirst traps all the time. Yeah. He will occasionally do some political content, but for the most part, he's just like doing these thirst trap videos.
It's mostly feed pics. Yeah, it's kind of
well. I mean, if it works, if it's getting you the views,
it doesn't.
Oh,
he's like, no, as a matter of fact, it absolutely not. So listen, we're gonna unpack the. We're gonna do this for the next. Actually, we burned through quite a bit of time. We're gonna do this for like the next 10 minutes. We're gonna do this for the next 10 minutes, and then three of us are gonna review. And Stacks, you'll love this because it's gonna be BS culture war stuff, but I think it's relatively germane. But let's first talk about the Trump indictment. So, listen, actually, Cypher is the guest. Why don't you recap what the indictment is, man? Just give the Cliff Notes.
Okay,
version.
So essentially what the indictment is one, it's not a free speech issue. Don't let these people lie to you. Don't let them do the narrative that this is Trump is getting in trouble because he just spoke his mind.
I can't just say that
I can't just say the election was stolen. No, you can say the election was stolen.
Yeah.
But once you take the election was stolen rhetoric and then use that to try to convince people and pull them into some sort of grand conspiracy to steal votes, to convince people, like you're allowed to try to convince people stuff.
I can't just say that I want to murder someone and then go pick up a knife and then show up at their place.
There you go.
To murder them.
Yeah.
And then when they come and get me, I'm like, I'm getting investigated for free speech. I can't just say I'm going to murder someone.
Or like hire a contract killer. I never actually pulled the trigger. I just used my mouth to say words. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
to be fair, I was going to say real quick, to Cypher's point, this is preemptively addressed in the indictment itself.
Yep.
Jack Smith goes out of his way to say this is not a free speech issue.
Yeah,
he had every right to say basically whatever he wanted. He had every right to lie even. What he did not have the right to do was engage in fraud or conspiracy. Go ahead, Cypher.
And to that point, like Trump could even people can even go and be like to legislatures and be like, hey, I think I won the election. You should look into it, which he did 70 times or however many it was. It was a ridiculous number of times.
63.
Lost every single case. Yeah, that was fucking close. So lost every single one. So what it boils down to is that they were using deceit and deception in order to basically convince some legislatures to send in another slate of electors, which might have been okay had it not been for everything else. And everything else is in the indictment. Everything else is the Trump being told directly that, hey, this is not legal. Hey, this is unethical. This is against the Constitution. You can't just have Mike Pence go and overturn the election and use the slate of electors in order to basically set up the case that, hey, there's ambiguity here. There's questions. We're just asking questions, guys. So we can't certify the election because there's fuckery afoot. Like when it gets into that section, which is the primary section, is what Trump is actually being charged with. And it becomes a conspiracy for this once that free speech issue becomes a conspiracy issue when those plans go into motion. So
right. So to give some examples here, some highlighted sections that I have. So like, for example, the Arizona Speaker of the House explained to Trump and his co-conspirators that investigations in Arizona uncovered no evidence of substantial fraud in the state. John Eastman, co-conspirator number 2, conceded he didn't know enough about facts on the ground in Arizona, but nonetheless told the Arizona House Speaker to decertify the results and let the court sort it out. The Arizona House Speaker refused, saying he would not play with the oath he had taken to uphold the Constitution and Arizona law. I want to provide some other examples here. On November 25th, co-conspirator number 3, which is Sidney Powell, who is arguably the most deranged of the Trump conspirators, which is considerable when you've given her company, filed a lawsuit against the governor of Georgia, falsely alleging massive election fraud accomplished through the voting machine company's election software and hardware. Before the lawsuit was even filed, the defendant retweeted a post promoting it. The defendant did this despite the fact that when he had discussed co-conspirator number 3's far-fetched public claims, the defendant had conceded they were unsupported and that co-conspirator number 3 sounded crazy. Just a couple more and then we'll move on with the rest of the indictment. But like there was one out here with Mike Pence himself, which was just bonkers. Let me find it here real quick. Let's see. Oh, this one. Guys, this one is nuts. I forgot about this one. The deputy White House counsel reiterated to Jeffrey Clark that there had been no outcome determinative fraud in the election, and that if the defendant, Donald Trump, remained in office nonetheless, there would be riots in every major city in the United States. Jeffrey Clark, who wanted to be the acting attorney general, said, well, that's why there's an Insurrection Act in which the president can authorize the military for
to shut down riots.
Suppression.
Yeah.
That is nuts, folks.
That
is, to make that very clear, they knew they were setting up a false predicate in order to invoke the Insurrection Act. That was the plan. That's a coup.
And they were going to try to do that if BLM started protesting stronger in front of the White House, not even because of the election per se, but just in general. Something they've been going down the rabbit hole on for about a year and a half. That's why Trump did the whole thing with the Bible, upside down Bible, and walk out with Mark Milley.
I have a question for you guys. Don't you feel like kind of everyone just kind of says everyone's a fascist nowadays?
That's basically
so.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
everyone's calling Trump a fascist. Yeah, everyone says that everything is shit, and then I point to a piece of shit and I go, maybe it's not. I don't know. It's hard to
That's
tell.
right. That's right. Like it's like listen. Okay, so you're basically calling Trump a fascist, but doesn't everybody do some fascistic things like, create a scheme to try to invoke the Insurrection Act? And for one of my favorite parts here too, the vice president told Trump that he thought there was no constitutional basis for the authority Trump was saying that he had and that it was improper. In response, Trump told the vice president, "You're too honest," which is exactly what somebody says when they're not lying, right?
Yep.
That's what I tell people when I'm trying to not get them to lie. Well, like when I'm basically like, listen, I don't want you to lie. I tell them they're too honest.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah. Just say less.
Yeah.
That's how treating one of the most powerful people in the world is just, have we considered just like maybe a little bit of a sandwich, like a compliment sandwich, just making sure that when you say, hey, you're trying to defraud the American people, maybe you can couch that in, hey, we don't have the exact count of all the votes that have been lost. Yeah, maybe it's somewhere in between 10 and 20, but maybe that could bridge the gap.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. The judge that he pulled for this Have you followed that cipher? The Tanya Chutkin, the judge who will be presiding over the trial.
Oh yeah, she's the one that's been the harshest of the judges on the insurrectionist. Which, hey, look at the draw, man. Maybe God is trying to tell you something. I don't know.
Well, it's so funny to me because, so Stacks, are you aware of this? So the judge that he drew for this particular indictment is basically the exact opposite of the one he drew for the National Defense Documents indictment, because number one, she's an Obama appointee.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, she has been brutal, justified, but brutal with January 6th defendants. And number three, she clapped back on Trump like 2 years ago when he tried to invoke executive privilege as a former president to basically keep the January 6th committee from like subpoenaing certain evidence. And he's like, listen, I'm asserting executive privilege. President Biden said, no, I'm not going to honor that.
Right.
So Donald Trump sued to try to block the release of those documents and correspondence to the January 6th insurrection, or to the January 6th committee. And this judge said, listen, presidents are not kings, and Donald Trump is not president. Like, just one of the greatest, like,
what a hard line.
Yeah. So I think he is screwed. The other thing I want to bring up here that we need to talk about real quick before we unfortunately have to change the subject. In the aftermath of this, Donald Trump put this on Truth Central. If you go after me, I'm coming after you.
Insane.
Sounds pretty threatening.
Yeah, seriously. But I think him getting banned off of Twitter was a free speech issue. Like, I feel like you should just be allowed to threaten people when you're the president of the United States. Anyway,
it did definitely play into the whole, they're trying to silence us all and make him more into a martyr.
Yeah. Did you see that Stephen Miller as well, when commenting on all of this, he drew a lot of parallels to Watergate, and then he said some comment about how essentially Watergate was just like a coup, and we've all seen the documents on how that, like, you know, Nixon was thrown under the bus or something like that, and Nixon never did those crimes. He made some I forgot exactly what he said, but yeah.
Why are all these people fucking Nixonites, man? What is
he said it was a deep state coup. Here, I've got the
of all the hills, of all
the
hills to die on, right?
No,
why Nixon?
Right. Yeah,
why
seriously.
Nixon? Yeah, like, that's been settled for 50 years. Why are you picking at that scab? Well, in the last thing I'll say on this, in response to that particular truth or troth or whatever he calls those utterances, the Department of Justice acted fast. They filed a motion with Judge Chutkin, basically saying that Donald Trump should be barred even further from talking about this case because now he's issuing threats. And Trump's attorneys were freaking out because the judge was like, yeah, Trump, you've got 3 days to give me a good reason why I shouldn't issue this highly restrictive protective order. And Trump's attorneys were like, well, listen, we got a busy weekend. Can you give us a week? And the judge went, no, Monday.
I mean, like, this is one of those situations where I'm hesitant to say that it is a threat. I mean, it's implied, right? That's what they come after me, I'm going to go after them. But it's not a threat of violence necessarily.
I largely agree. I don't know if this should be tackled legally, but what we should acknowledge is that there is 100%, and this is going to get Josiah off, I know it, there is a double standard here. There is a, what do you always call it? The, like an
asymmetry of expectations.
Yeah. That, like,
which I refuse to contribute to it. Refuse.
Yeah. Continue.
I say stick it to him every opportunity you get. Fuck this guy.
No, 100%. But like, we should acknowledge that if any, even sitting member of any, like if a judge said that, right, who is like even closely aligned to this Trump thing, that would be blasted all over Fox News. But when the former president of the United States, who is currently being indicted on 3 separate counts, like, that is, I don't know, we should just acknowledge how deranged that all is.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think in a strictly textualist perspective, and with no like history with who Trump is, I would be reluctant as well to read that as a direct threat. But I think that he should be afforded no charity in this respect, particularly
when you try to
record of rhetoric. Yeah, exactly. So like, I think it should be afforded the absolute harshest interpretation.
Well, yeah, and I think
quick, wait, real quick, we got this comment. Read this comment.
Of course, he's been threatening. What do you expect him to bend over and concede to a blaringly obvious witch hunt?
I don't know if this dude is being for real or not. I'm going to assume he is just joking, Joe Falcone. But if not, you're welcome to make the case, my man. We will stop.
We love
the next part.
Unlike some people, we accept dissenters and people who disagree because we believe in freedom of speech. Unlike our opponents would lead you to believe that we do not.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, assuming it is in earnest, it's not a sarcastic comment. I take it as not a sarcastic comment, given that it's got 2 periods rather than 3.
That's right.
But assuming that it is not sarcastic, what witch hunt? Trump is pretty much like we're not sitting on a jury. We don't have to like until convicted guilty in a court of law. Like no, we have the fucking evidence.
You remember those witch hunts? You remember those witch hunts in the 1600s where someone would try to burn down a building and then they would have a can of gas and matches and then they would go, oh, the witch, and then hang them. That's what the witch hunt was, right? That's what we're talking about. That's what happened.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think there was a total absence of match and gasoline. There was just that was a witch hunt. Yeah. Which is Stax's point, folks. It's not a witch hunt. It's not a witch hunt if the subject is actually a witch, right? Like hey, but no, he's afforded the assumption of innocence legally, but that doesn't mean that the rest of us, since we're not on the jury, as Cypher points out, that doesn't mean that we're obligated to hold to such strict standards, because we have seen preliminary evidence for years now. We saw what he said leading up to the election, during the election, after the election, the January 6th committee, which is not a legal committee, but it did its work with a legal rigor because they wanted to make the case. Listen, we understand that he's a former president. He's the leader of the Republican Party. So they went about it as litigiously as possible to make the case. We've seen we've read the indictment itself, and Jack Smith is really good at making these persuasive, narrative-driven indictments where it's in a chronological order. It lays it out very neatly. Yeah, dude's guilty of sin, 100%. And what's funny is some other things is like, so you have the protective order situation, which they'll decide on Monday. But also Trump's attorneys are freaking out. They're like, he can't get a fair trial in D.C. We need to go someplace more diverse. And literally, no joke, they said West Virginia. Yeah, Trump should get a trial in West Virginia, which he won by like 40%, right? Yeah. It's pathetic. Stupid. It's so pathetic. This trial in particular, I don't want to say I don't care about the Florida one now, because I do. But now I'm considerably less worried that if Aileen Cannon, the presiding judge of the Florida case, if she decides to just go full Trump partisan, because if he loses this case over January 6th, I think like the charges that were brought would basically, he'll die in prison if he were to be, number one, convicted and then sentenced accordingly. So we'll see what happens.
I would say this is probably the most damning of the indictments. I think there's 5 current ones that are occurring, and I would say that the January 6th insurrection is probably number 1 as the most extreme and the most highest consequences possible.
Cypher, before we move on to the next subject, do you have anything you want to say, or like final summations on the Trump indictment? Again, we had to blitz through it because Stax and I were quibbling for 45 minutes, as we're wont to do.
No, I don't really have much else to say. I think we covered it really well.
Cool. So the next thing I want to talk about, and Stax, get ready, man. You're gonna be hyped. This is a BS culture war thing, and here's the only reason we're talking about it on my side. So this concerns Kyle Kulinski, Krystal Ball, and Adam and Sitch. So it's a 2v2 debate, and so
I don't know who
Adam and Sitch are. Cypher, how would you describe them? Because you know who they are, right? Like you've.
Yeah, I know of. I haven't talked to them directly, but I know of them, and
I call them centristy, like right-leaning.
They're right of center, probably a little less so than maybe Connor is. Not by much, but maybe a little less so.
And they are very much culture war fixated. So
yes,
they, for example,
which is why I would say he was two Connors right. So. Just
right, exactly. So So like, for example, they can't stand your boy Cody Johnson's Staxiums. They despise
my boy
news. Yeah, well, just because your close friendship with L and L being a writer,
sure, the writer,
that sort of thing. Yeah, so you are the closest proximate to Cody Johnson, even though I love Cody Johnson as well. They despise him, particularly Sitch, and particularly when it comes to Cody Johnson's criticism of Jordan Peterson. Like they do not like that whatsoever. But they've actually had some really interesting conversations. They had one with Sam Cedar. They had one with Anna Kasparian. They've had conversations with President Sunday, with Kyle Kalinske and Krystal Ball, like for Vosh, for like relatively small content creators, because I think they have like 30,000 subs on YouTube, which is pretty, I mean, certainly big compared to me, but like they are punching way above their weight class in terms of the conversation that they have. Right. This one, I watched like 20 minutes of it and was so sufficiently outraged. I was like, okay, well, if I feel this way, Stax is almost certainly going to have some opinions on this. And the conversation is about who is more authoritarian, the right or the left. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like to do is we'll watch this together. We'll play at a 1.25 speed, and we will offer. Wait, why did it do that? That's not good. Oh, there it is. Can you all see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, we can see it.
Just
before we start,
there's an echo. There's an echo.
There's an echo.
Okay, so when you all are ready to say something, I will take it off screen and we will break it down. Do you still hear the echo?
No. But I can't hear it when you speak. I can only hear when I speak.
When one of us speak, it's coming through. Correct. So it's something to do with the.
This has been an ongoing issue.
But just before we get started, about how long is this? Because I got maybe 40 minutes, maybe an hour.
We basically have 40. We've got till 2:30. It's longer than that, so we'll get in as far as we can, and we'll try to break it down. But again, when you have something to say, just say something. I'll bring the screen back to this, and we'll break it down. So here we go. Adam and Sitch and Kyle Kalinske and Krystal Ball.
3, 2, 1. Welcome, Sitch and Adam of the Sitch and Adam Show. As I've already called you 3 times so far in our intro, my favorite centrists. It's good to see you guys.
What's up? How's it going?
Good to be here. Yeah. So we talked. You guys were on the show. I don't know how long ago it was now, 6 months or something like that. And Krystal wasn't here that episode. She's excited to be here this episode. So it's I was really looking forward to this. I find this conversation exciting. And I feel like it's rare that you can have like good faith disagreement with people who you know are coming from an honest place. Usually, this topic in particular is so nuclear red hot that it's impossible to find some common ground on this stuff. So we wanted to discuss. Actually, before we get into the topic, I told Krystal I was going to do this before. I know you guys are big Game of Thrones fans. I am like the #1 Game of Thrones fan. So
yeah. I am going to play this part. I do remember this part now because it made me actually love Kyle Kalinske so much more than what I did prior to us. Just hang on 1 second. We're going to skip to his part.
Completely lovable, but I feel like he's go with Ned Stark, obviously.
What do you think? Sitch, what do you think?
I liked Catelyn a lot, and I also liked Straw. Like she's a mom. No, but she
was Ned wasn't going to go to Karen.
And you're like screwing around with
told about John Aaron. Hey, we're getting way deep in the weeds. Let me just give you guys So first of all, I'm 100% with Adam. I have 1 and 1A. 1 is Ned. 2 is actually Tywin Lannister. I think the acting job in the show from the character.
Tywin Lannister, the best Game of Thrones character by far, played by Charles Dance. This is relevant to the culture war take, guys. The Hand of the King, the Lord of Casterly Rock, the head of House Lannister, the greatest of all Game of Thrones characters. Now we can continue with the shit that matters.
So fucking obnoxious.
All right, so let's get to the main topic. That was fun. We honestly could have scheduled a whole Game of Thrones thing. That would have been fun too.
Game of Thrones ties into authoritarianism pretty well, actually.
That's true.
That's why I love it. It's rife with political themes. That's phenomenal. So here's the question that we wanted to dig into. Who is more authoritarian, the woke or the anti-woke? And I was going to give you my position. Krystal will give you hers. You guys can lay out yours. But first, I'll just give you my definition of wokeness so you know like what I'm working off of here. I think there's one definition which has like a positive connotation, and there's another which has a negative connotation. The positive one was like, if you're woke, you're alert to injustice and trying to change it. The negative definition, I would say, is authoritarian in service of perceived social justice ends. And so typically when I use woke, I am typically using it more as a pejorative. I mean, people who are authoritarian in service of what they think are social justice ends. So with that definition, I would claim today, my thesis is this. I think both sides are authoritarian. Many on both sides can be authoritarian, although you can be woke or anti-woke and not be authoritarian. But I'm more concerned about the anti-woke authoritarians because from my perspective, it manifests in legislation much more often, which directly impacts people. Whereas on the other side, I think that wokeness can be very authoritarian, but it usually manifests more through culture which is bad, but I just don't think the stakes are as high. So I know that Sitch, for example, I know you like to focus more on the culture and not as much on the legislation, which might explain some of the disconnect here. But tell me your thoughts on this. Since I mentioned Sitch, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on who's more authoritarian and why?
So before we do that, since that was a good chunk there, as Stacks, you definitely know, and Cypher, I think you do as well from our interactions. That was almost verbatim my position on this matter. When people talk about culture war stuff, I'm like, guys, not saying that it doesn't matter, but who the F cares compared to legislation? Legislation is where state power is applied to citizens. That's infinitely more important than the wide, disparate element of culture, okay, which is much less centrally focused. So this is my beef. Kyle's actually, this is why I wanted to discuss this. That was almost like a beautiful verbatim utterance of my issue with culture war focused centrists.
Yeah.
So what do you all think about his definition, about his stance? And again, we haven't gotten into Adam and Sitch's response yet, but what about what Kyle had to say there?
I mean, you know how I feel that generally speaking, I mean, like this kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, that there are two parts that matter, but we should recognize that policy at the end of the day is what's changing people. I do recognize that culture war matters to people, so it should matter to us in a sense, right? We should always couch it in the fact that policy matters at the end of the day, but in order to get that policy, we kind of need people. And to get, like, we should also be focusing at least a little bit on how people react. But that is almost always secondary to the policies that get shifted. And it seems weird to turn a blind eye on the more important issue and focus on a way lesser, way more esoteric component of this.
Okay. What about you, Cypher?
Leave it to the two white passing guys to say that culture. I'm fucking around.
Proudly.
Yeah. Partly. So I'm going to say something that a lot of liberals and lefties are not going to like to hear. I'm going to quote Andrew Breitbart. Politics is downstream from culture. And he is 100% correct. Worldview and culture dictate how people are going to look at solutions to problems in a policy perspective. So if we want to actually get the policies that we want, we have to be able to couch them in a cultural understanding that people latch onto and actually see that it represents their values. This is why Breitbart became a thing. This is why Rush Limbaugh was so popular. This is why when Radio Free America, or whatever the hell it was called, the progressive radio station that shut down after a bit, was so popular. It's because these places were able to take whatever was the cultural zeitgeist at the time and then wrap policy around those in order to do it. So while I agree that I'm much more interested in policy positions, we're not going to get any of the policy positions unless we're able to articulate where the culture is and how to get them on there.
I'm not sure we disagree. Kind of. Let me use a quick example here, and maybe we can clarify if we disagree. I understand that culture is that people are much more receptive to culture war talking points than the intricacies of policy, uncontested. What I'm saying is that scrutinizing legislation to me is infinitely more important. So let me give you an example. More people care about Colin Kaepernick, the football player, kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance. More people care about that than Ron DeSantis's legislation in Florida. They shouldn't. It is an absolute irrational misappropriation of priority. What Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida is infinitely more dangerous and more authoritarian than a football player kneeling before the Pledge of Allegiance. And yet more people care and are hyper-focused on that than Ron DeSantis's authoritarianism. And to me, especially when you're political commentators like Adam Sitch and Kyle and Krystal, when you breathe life into that, you're fucking up. You are getting it ass backwards, in my opinion. Unless you acknowledge, like, hey, listen, I'm going to focus on the Colin Kaepernick stuff, but I just want to clarify objectively what Ron DeSantis is doing is infinitely more dangerous. And that's
it's the same weird coin, though, right? Go ahead, Stacks.
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, I think it's a little weird to use things that are so like years from each other because no one's talking about Colin Kaepernick anymore. So like just looking around, obviously more people are talking about the Florida bill than Colin Kaepernick. I don't know if it's the case that more people talked about Colin Kaepernick than Ron DeSantis's bill, because I haven't heard a lot. I've heard so much about the Florida bill, and that could be just embroiled in the fact that that's what I live and breathe. That's where all my social media exists, and it's very possible that I might be off in this case. So it's a little hard for me to determine which one is actually talked more about and cared more about. But I do agree that, especially when it comes to Colin Kaepernick, having the right to free speech and recognize that politics is embroiled in everything, and recognizing, that was during the Black Lives Matter protests, is that a culture war thing or is that a policy thing? It kind of intermingled in that case.
There's an incestuous relationship, I think. Again, like Cypher said, politics is downstream of culture. So I will concede that it exists on a continuum.
So I don't know if Colin Kaepernick is a culture war bullshit thing, and that
it's on this, again, because it's on, in my opinion, it is, because even though it's on the spectrum, it's on the gap between a Republican governor wielding the powers of the state to litigate and legislate his culture war positions, as opposed to a wealthy athlete and a celebrity invoking his First Amendment right to simply protest. The fact that so much controversy was loaded in that, and you talk about like the people who discuss Ron DeSantis's legislation, it's mostly people on the left raising the alarms about it. Otherwise,
well, the right agrees with them, right? That's the whole problem. So let's put this in the perspective of what actually happened to get Ron DeSantis to be Ron DeSantis, right? It was people coming out and deciding that whatever it was that was being taught in schools was an important issue from a cultural perspective. That gave Ron DeSantis the tools, ability, and power to enact his legislation in a very authoritarian way. The right wing agrees with it because they're going to say, "Oh, it is parents' rights. It's all this stuff. We want to protect the babies," right? Anytime somebody says we got to protect the babies, scratch your head and be like, "What do you mean by that?" Because there's always some underlying bullshit that's going to be along with it, right? So, is that really bullshit? Like, so if we could bring it back to the Colin Kaepernick issue, which is what I think Stacks was getting to, is that Colin Kaepernick was doing that in order to bring like awareness and, not respect the flag or whatever, because the country is racist, right? But that was during the time of 2014, the Ferguson riots, everything else. So
wasn't it? Well, he also did it during
I think it was the first
during Black Lives Matter.
I
think he did it as well, I think that I understand your point, Josiah, which is why the fuck are so, because what I can't acknowledge is that Republicans, for some reason, screamed at Colin Kaepernick doing this. And I have no idea why still to this day. He wasn't even disrespecting the flag. He used to be sitting, and then he asked a naval officer or he asked someone in the army. Yeah, no, for sure. But he's like, I want to kneel. I want to show that I love this country, but that I feel like an alien in it. And I feel like, that maybe not an alien, but I feel like I've been alien.
I'm going to give you the last word on this. So, because that way, when you're done talking, we can play the clip. Go ahead.
Sure. Sorry. I guess I just want to say that I understand your point that conservatives seem to be outraged over very, very benign, who cares? Oh my God, this is freedom of speech. Why do you care so much that someone is speaking? And yet when substantial things like in Florida happen, the right seems to be turning a blind eye. I don't know if it's a discrepancy between culture war and policy. I think it's just like conservatives need to realign their frustrations.
Yeah. Well, we'll continue to play, and then maybe
it was totally
the discourse between Kyle and Krystal and Adam and Sitch. Perhaps my point can even be better articulated.
Sure.
We'll go ahead and get back to them.
Well, first I'll say I like your definition of woke. The one that I use is generally that woke is the idea that liberalism won't solve our social problems, and that something further to the left is required culturally. It's funny that what you said about like how the wokeness manifests, or the authoritarianness of wokeness manifests on the left culturally and through institutions. On the right, it's kind of manifesting through the wall. Because I said the same thing myself several times.
Cool.
And I agree with that framing. However, to be a stick in the mud, I have to question, what is the point of framing the question as like who's more authoritarian in the first place?
So, I mean, I guess in my mind, the reason I asked the question that way is because of that distinction, that I think the anti-woke people are enforcing it through law So I think by its very nature, I would consider that more authoritarian, because to me, the bar towards authoritarian is, are you legally imposing this on people?
Well, and if I can chime in here, I mean, just in terms of my own personal journey with regards to my view on wokeness, I feel like there's been an arc where there has been huge overreach and more authoritarianism on the side of the quote unquote woke that has, led to a backlash that has led to even more authoritarian tactics from the anti-woke. And, people can hold whatever views they want to hold, good, bad, indifferent, and it's fine to have a spectrum of views that are out there, whether I agree with them or not. When it becomes a problem that we should care about as a democratic society, in my opinion, is when it goes from a view I'm advocating for something I'm going to use authoritarian tactics to achieve. So I think that's why the focus on, all right, who's leveraging more authoritarianism in service of their ideology at this point, that's why the question to me is relevant.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with what you said completely, Krystal, about how the wokeness of the left is what's created the anti-woke right-wing backlash, especially the legal backlash that we're seeing in all these state legislatures. And
I agree. I'm with you. I'm with you. But I'm with you. But go ahead.
This is bullshit.
If you're going to try to pinpoint where exactly this whole thing happened, who is the first reaction to this? Who was the first reactionary? Depends on where you want to start it, okay? We can go all the way back to 1980s and say it was Bork. Then we can go back to 1982 and say it was Ronald Reagan. We can go back to 78 and say it was the fucking, or 67, 68, say it was Nixon or John Birch Society. Like, we have to have a cutoff point at some point. In a modern context, the cutoff point is Obama's election. That is when it started, okay? In the modern sense, in the current century. All right, we can go back to Gingrich and say that Gingrich did it in the 90s, similar with Clinton, when Clinton was called the first black president, which was a good turn of phrase, but not what they meant, because he was working class is what it basically boiled down to. But we go back to Obama, and Obama bent over fucking backwards to accommodate Republican ideas into his platforms, into the fucking the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, et cetera. And it was just like, you're a secret Muslim terrorist. You're actually a communist. You're a socialist. You hate America. You were up with Reverend Wright.
You're not even American. You were born in Kenya. Yeah. No, 100%.
All of the racism, othering, and stricture.
This is right here. This is probably because when I got, like I said, 20 minutes into this, and at the time I was responding to Adam and Sitch on it, and they never responded. But this was my point. It's like, you all were so disingenuous, in my opinion, about when you start the timeline. The idea, and by the way, the implication here being that the right doesn't have agency. Okay, well, maybe the right has some authoritarian impulses, but it's only because the authoritarian impulses on the left was first.
Right.
Number one. Even if I grant you that premise, the right has agency. They can choose to respond with authoritarian tactics or not, number one. But number two, I actually reject the premise, because Cypher gave very specific points in the timeline. But if we're really going to accept the broad premise of the conversation, woke versus anti-woke, I hate to tell you, the vast majority of American history has been anti-woke. It was anti-woke at the inception of this country, period. Anti-woke, as we, in terms of regressive politics, have dominated the vast majority of the U.S. timeline. So I reject the premise that woke started first. We don't even have to take it back to Obama, Gingrich, Reagan, Bork, and whoever. We can take it back to 1776. It wasn't really frickin' woke, people. So to me, the premise actually works against him. Like, no, for most of American history, it's been the anti-woke conservative culture which has dominated the United States. And then we have seen it recede over time. We saw a resurgence as well under Reagan. Then we saw it decline again, as you said, with Obama. Then it came back in full force. So I reject the premise outright. Stacks, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring up 2 points 2 points in the timeline that neither of you guys really accepted. The first that I want to hit really hard is 9/11 and the ensuing Iraq war, that I feel like really fueled all of this so hard. When you get the hyper jingoism of like America first, and you guys all remember, most people in our age remember what happened to the Dixie Chicks, now formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, where they said, "Hey, I'm against this war, Bush isn't our president, and they got dragged through hell. They basically lost their careers.
They were
huge,
canceled.
Yes,
they were canceled.
Yes. And if I could point to probably the first example that I could have of canceled, it is conservatives canceling the Dixie Chicks in a modern era. The second thing that I want to, the second time point that I want to bring up is, and I guess this is all just in my lifetime. So there could be like, obviously,
Sure.
like, Reagan. Yeah, totally. But the second thing that I want to bring up, something that is definitely fresh in my memory is her name Anita Kasparian? No. Who was the
Sarkeesian?
Sarkeesian. Thank you. Anita Sarkeesian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where like basically she was like a games reporter who was saying,
Yep.
"Oh, gotcha. I'm looking at a lot of these video games and I see incessant misogyny. I'm seeing like I remember playing Modern Warfare 2 as a kid, and one of the campaigns is you got to go shoot up an airport. Like it was like crazy. And Anita was kind of going in there saying like, hey, this seems incredibly toxic. Maybe we should have a conversation about how exactly this is influencing our mind. If you want to treat games like art, which I think it is, I want to criticize it." And I don't know if that's like who exactly started that there, right?
Yeah.
With Modern Warfare 2, the anti-woke thing, and Anita
Sarkeesian.
It's so long, yeah. Was the woke person. I don't know who started it in that train, but like if that's considering like antagonizing a movement that bred Sargon of Akkad and all of those like anti-woke 2014 YouTubers, it was Anita Sarkeesian that started that. Sure, but that was still a response to the incessant amount of misogyny in our system that like I don't know if I have a starting point here, and I don't know if it really matters at a certain point.
Right. No, I agree with that. And I was actually going to bring up Gamergate specifically because it seems like Adam and Sitch became politically aware around that time. And so I wanted to give a little dig to them. Just because you weren't politically aware before 2010 doesn't mean the rest of us weren't. And we haven't been around this along the same block as you. So
the American history did not, in fact, start in 2016, 2015, 100%. So I just, when I saw this, like I almost had like a rage-induced aneurysm, like, that's such a cherry pick timeline. But anyway, let's continue because we're not even. Yeah. Wait, were you gonna say something?
I said I wasn't gonna interrupt.
Yeah. Okay.
I would just be cautious when we're kind of talking about this question because I don't think it should be used like, oh, the right wing is more authoritarian with their anti-wokeness, so like they're the bad guys. That should be what should be focused on. When it should clearly, in my mind, if the left wokeness is what's creating the anti-woke authoritarian backlash in the law, both these things need to stop, essentially.
Sure, but people are responsible for their own actions. Like the fact that someone did something that pisses you off doesn't mean like you're justified in becoming an authoritarian.
Well, no, it doesn't justify it like morally, but when we're talking about like how coalitions of power form, right? Mm-hmm. I think this is true for Trump. Not as much, like 100%, but definitely I think Trump was able to run and is definitely running now. And you see with DeSantis, though he's kind of floundering nationally, kind of trying to run on this energy that if the mainstream American, the normie, the undecided voter, if they're out there and they perceive that the left has lost its mind and is crazy, then they're just going to go to the right, and they might not perceive sort of the legal authoritarianism that we're talking about.
So I want to get Adam in here in a second, but I just wanted to respond to what Krystal and Sitch said, because I actually slightly disagree with you when you said the wokeness from the right, or excuse me, the wokeness from the left led to the right-wing backlash. I actually don't totally agree with that. I think that the right has sort of hyper-fixated on some extremes on the left, and then they just sort of act like it's the entire left. And so then it leads to the backlash. So it's like they're perceiving it's the whole left going insane and being authoritarian and hyper-focusing on social justice stuff. But really, they're just nitpicking like 5% of something and acting like it's 100% of the left. And that's what then leads to. So it could be a backlash, but I think it's sort of like delusional in a sense that it's like as big a problem as they say it is.
Well, we're also talking about cynical political actors who see something that has energy on their side and that they're going to use to build a national profile a la Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, I totally agree with. Yeah. All right, Adam, jump in. We haven't heard from you yet.
Well, you pitch this problem to me, and I object to a little bit of the framing of woke and anti-woke because, I do perceive woke as like the authoritarian left. I've never really perceived of the right, people on the right who are against wokeness as authoritarians, because you can have people on the right that are against authoritarianism on the left that aren't authoritarians. Like they're not taking extreme positions on gay marriage or abortion or anything like that. They're reasonable people on the right that are against what's going on the left. I think part of the conflict that you will probably perceive with the legislation aspect of it is that the legislation affects people's lives more, but I think there's a perception issue here, because I think the authoritarian tactics that are on the left are in everybody's face all day long at work, and they're not necessarily thinking about the abortion laws or the push to make gay marriage illegal again, or these CRT bans. They're thinking about, I have to walk on eggshells at work and completely censor myself because I might offend somebody, or some grievance archaeologist might come along and dig up something I said on the internet 10 years ago and try to get me fired.
So okay, now I want to unpack that a bit, because there was a lot in there that I think was just bonkers. Okay, so number one, so with Adam there in particular, he's like, yeah, people are, the left's culture war stuff is in your face. And I'm like, you helped create that. You because you and Sitch focus on it in part. You are, when he's complaining, like, listen, sure, there's legislation, that is regressively restricting abortion rights, and there's a push on from elements in the Republican Party and empowered conservatives like Justice Clarence Thomas, for example, to revisit gay marriage protections and all these things. Like, yeah, sure, that's bad, but people are more focused on, what if I say something offensive at work? It's crazy to me. It's absolutely insane to me that these things are considered not only comparable, but that a fear of offending somebody at work should be more of your focus than, again, those legislative pushes he's talking about. It's insane. That's what it's just, the premise is so weird.
Yeah, I don't even necessarily disagree with what he's saying. I think I have just a little frustration with the framing, because I do think that he is 100% right, that generally speaking that is a real phenomenon that a lot of people interact with, where they do feel this way, where they go into work, they're terrified they're going to offend someone, they're worried that they're walking on eggshells. I do agree that is there, but how is your response not to then, okay, gotcha, we need to shift our framework then. We need to shift our eyes somewhere else, and we need to stop focusing on these issues and maybe talk a little bit more about substantive issues.
Well, there's an easy fix to this. You can just not talk about politics at work. I don't know about the two of you, but when I was growing up, I was told there's certain things you don't talk about in polite company.
Religion and
politics, finance. You don't talk about those things in polite company because you're not wanting to accidentally offend anybody or get in trouble for anything that you say. So you just don't do it. Do I follow that?
I don't follow that one bit.
My boss knows I do a podcast, and so he likes to needle me by making me scared about saying something.
Yeah, but
it's just funny.
I do think. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
No, just the other solution would be unionize. You can't get fired for offending somebody if you fucking unionize and put in worker protections. Like these things have solutions.
That right there is actually a really interesting point, which I've made before, which is, so you're afraid about losing your job arbitrarily and capriciously? Wow, that sounds like a really compelling case against conservative at-will employment. Like this is where I tell people all the time, the Venn diagram of U.S. politics always leads back to the right wing sucks. Because even if I grant you the premise, inevitably we wind back at the same thing. The politically conservative worldview just objectively sucks, because if it weren't for the lack of unionization and if it weren't for the lack of employee protections, there would be no need, even if I grant you the premise, there would be no need to fear this. So if we just take the analysis one level deeper, the side that you grade, and that's the other thing too, Adam and Sitch grade the right on a curve. And that's the other frustrating thing here. It's so aggravating, because it's like, I think Cypher makes a great point here. Okay, sounds like you should support leftist progressive worker policy. You should support unionization. You should support enhancing employee protections, maybe at will employment, which again, by the way, that is a right-wing phenomenon. We shouldn't listen. If you got business, you should be able to hire and fire wherever you want, whenever you want. Oh, that can be used against us. Oh no. No, I love it. I love that you're being hoisted, that you have a fear that you're being hoisted by your own petard.
Yeah.
Maybe you should work with the left, the progressive left, and get rid of that entire paradigm altogether.
But I will say there is, I hate just being like the left is ontologically right, but like, or the left is ontologically correct. But like, I will say that there is some nuance to this talking about politics at work, because I talk a lot of politics at work. Like all of my coworkers know if you engage in a conversation with me, it's going to end up.
You're a stripper.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
But like,
I'm sorry. Answer.
But yeah, like I will talk about politics at work, and I make sure that everyone like feels like, hey, if you ever want to like dump out of a conversation, if you feel like I'm frustrated with what I'm saying, please let me know. I will 100% like I need to concede to all of this. And like I do talk about politics and work in what I feel like is a very appropriate and welcoming environment. But then I also have my boss who super conservative and said, I don't even know if he's a little bit in HR for what he said, and it was couched in this politics shit. But it was like so obviously like it was like targeted at my black coworker about like Obama, and it was like, whoa, what the f- is that? And it was like, wait, we like it almost was like a reaction to be like, oh, maybe we don't talk about politics.
You know what's hilarious is, as the most militantly like aggressively partisan of the three of us, I actually do not talk politics at work, period. If it even trends in that direction, I am like an aggressive conversation change. I will change the subject like none other.
I believe my firm belief is like all of our conversations should be geared towards that, because that's how we make our lives better, is like funneling through a democracy. And all of my friends are like constantly like, oh, don't get Hunter started on this shit. Like he'll just jump in and just fucking go.
And he's like, and furthermore,
someone talked a little bit of shit about Biden one time, and I like jumped, and she was like, whoa, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I
dude, you hear somebody say at work, he heard somebody at work say, let's go Brandon. He came up out of that chair, went on a 10-minute spree. Then you find out the guy's name is actually Brandon, and they were just congratulating him. He's like frothing at the mouth. They have to tranquilize him.
Yeah, but
don't you ever insult our
what I'm trying to say is it reminds me of this old Mike Birbiglia joke where he was like saying, no, comedy at the work isn't bad. It's people disguising bigotry as comedy. You know, like where he's like, he gave the example where like where like the boss would come in and say, nice tits, Sharon, and then Sharon would complain. He's like, it's just a joke. So instead of addressing the underlying issue of like sexism in the workplace, they're like, no jokes allowed then, you know. And it's like, it's not, the issue isn't comedy necessarily, and I don't think the issue is talking politics necessarily. I think the issue is, I don't know, like you just kind of have to be conscientious of other people sometimes, and maybe that's a big ask.
It is a big ask, because some people are sanctimonious assholes.
Yeah.
And the left has a problem with that. The right has a problem with it too.
For sure.
They just have a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
And the only other point that I want to make on this before y'all can say whatever is that when I was looking for a new job after leaving the military, every single conservative that was cool with me on Facebook messaged me and told me to put my Facebook post on private so I could still get hired.
Yeah.
So their position that, you know, everybody's walking on eggshells and stuff, it's not projection. It's partly true, but the fact of the matter is, them telling me that, they know for a fact that they would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. No, listen, I'm not saying, I'll simply acknowledge this, and then we're gonna move on to the rest of the conversation. We should have just made this the entire episode, because I'm telling you, this conversation is just like, we're not even 10 minutes in, and there's just so much to unpack here. But like, I do want to say, to be completely fair, of course, I have no doubt that there are people who have some professional or social anxieties about like what to say and where, when they feel that there could be some sort of consequence to it. I have no doubt that that's the case. I consider myself pretty socially adept. I've been in situations where I'm like, oh my God, did I just say the wrong thing? It happens. And I think that some of that is, number one, I think that's probably been eternally present in the history of the modern workforce. I don't think that that's just with the rise of woke as we know it, number one. Number two, I also think that, well, number two, the point that we made about that's why we got to increase unionization and workplace protections. But number three, I also think you make it considerably worse the more you like signal boost this stuff, in my opinion. I think the more you perpetrate the notions, you better be careful what you say at work, or the woke, intolerant, fascist left, they're going to get you fired. I think that will only accelerate and exacerbate people's
because
feelings.
I do engage with the culture war every once in a while, but almost always my point is, can we please fucking chill here? Like, can we please
every once in a while a day,
down?
every once in a while a day. I love it, you lying SOB.
No, but
All
like
right.
I do recognize that like we are so quick. I do feel like we are maybe quicker than ever to sort of like poke at and not forgive people. I don't know if that's true though. Like I'm obviously so biased.
Social media has probably made that. I imagine it's a nexus of things. It's number one. I haven't looked at employment history. I don't know where we are in terms of relative employment protections, like in the history of the modern workforce. If employees are generally better protected than ever or less protected than ever, if it's been static, that's a serious question. That's a nexus point. Number two, social media, where there's the cloak of anonymity and the reach.
Yeah.
It is easier to quote unquote, like when people talk of cancel culture with Twitter, like, listen, we have engaged in quote unquote, we have canceled people since the dawn of civilization. Believe it or not, we tend to socially punish people who don't share our values. We've always done it. We've always kicked people out of social groups and things like that for espousing dissident views. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's part of human nature. Has social media exacerbated the ease of it? Sure. It's like boycotts. People are like, wow, you can punish corporations now on social media, left, right, and center. We've always, at least, again, since the dawn of modern U.S. history, boycotts and picketing existed.
And even further,
you had to go outside. You had to go outside and actually like hold up signs to be effective in large numbers. Now you can do it from the comfort of your computer chair and rally a bunch of people via social media.
The barrier to entry has gone to zero. The bar is on the floor.
Yeah, and I will say there is a problem with that, and I do think that people are very quick to excise groups in a community and very quick to turn on each other, and I'm not comfortable with it very often.
Or are you not? All right, you ready?
It's a much more tangible thing for people in their daily lives. And I think that's why a lot of times there's this big push against left-wing authoritarianism that is more present, even though you might say that it's more, it's not as important socially or legislatively.
So basically, to sum up your argument, and correct me if I'm wrong, the argument is sort of like culture, in your opinion, supersedes legislation because it seemingly affects more people because culture affects everybody, whereas legislation might affect small pockets of people. I'm not sure I agree with that for one point, but the other point of
well, I mean,
go ahead.
You're saying that it affects more people. I mean, it does affect more people, right?
Well, I would say when it legally affects somebody, that has a bigger impact than just socially or culturally affecting people. Because you could, feel bad about somebody going on a cancel culture crusade against you online, and that can suck. And I don't want to downplay that. But I think it's a lot worse when you talk about legislation going after people in a way where you used to be able to take an abortion pill in state X, and now you can't take an abortion pill in state X. But look,
well, that's only going to matter if you need an abortion or are in a situation where you think you might need an abortion.
That's not the only issue where I would say the anti-woke people have become authoritarian. So like I broke this down into a number of different issues. So like book bans is one thing. We could discuss that. I think there's a lot of book banning coming from the anti-woke right. LGBTQ restrictions, we can get into that if you want, where there's a lot of that coming from the right. There's even protest restrictions in a lot of red states where they're cracking down on free protest in the wake of George Floyd, where there were some riots, but they do these bills that are overreaching where it goes after protest too. You brought up restrictions when it comes to abortion. I think that's a fair thing to bring up too. I even think things like the drug war, which I think it's an authoritarian thing to lock somebody up for putting something in their body when they're not hurting anybody else. I think that also affects that, that sort of led to mass incarceration, which impacts a lot of people. So look, I take your point in the sense that culturally, almost by definition, it will affect like everybody, right?
Yeah.
And legislatively, maybe it doesn't. I guess my point is, even though it might be smaller numerically, I think it's like quantitatively a bigger impact. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, it's
qualitatively, qualitatively a bigger impact.
I think it's just a tougher sell politically, obviously, and I think that's why the right is gaining ground on these issues legislatively, because they're able to do it, behind the perception of the general public. And I want to say before we move forward, I'm pro-choice. Like I'm not against limiting abortion. I'm pro-gay marriage. So on those issues, I am definitely on your side. But I do think that there are people on the right that are, in favor of those things as well, that are not necessarily against them. I think it's like a far right thing that they want to ban all abortion and reban gay marriage and stuff like that. But I'll let you guys continue.
I think that.
So since we've only got like 8 minutes, I think there were probably enough there for us to unpack. Did you know, again, and I don't know if he realizes he did it, but Adam like the assumptions, and he's like, listen, woke is just inherently authoritarian. But the authoritarian impulses you're talking about on the right, well, that's just the far right. Did you see how he kind of like he shifted the parameters there? And basically, listen, if you're woke, that's inherently authoritarian. Authoritarian or wokeism is authoritarianism. But the authoritarian impulses on the right, that's just a particular subset of extremists and fanatics on the right. I think that's very dishonest.
Yeah, I think I don't even know if he's necessarily being dishonest or if he's not recognizing his own biases, because and those are very different to me.
Sure. No. Yeah, there may be no deliberate.
But not just that. I think that that there are specific battlegrounds in this country, and social media is just one of them. And in those cases, for sure, liberal, left-leaning, extremely left-leaning positions are the cultural dominant force. I will 100% concede those grounds. But then I could also point to like city council meetings of like, suburban, well-to-do neighborhoods and say, oh, a left-leaning person would not feel like that is 100% concentrated in deeply conservative ideology. And you could point there and say, hey, if I go to speak on like my city council meetings on like how we should let minorities into our neighborhoods, like I'm going to get booed out, like I'm going to get pushed out. And he's like, well, I live in social media, so I feel like I'm flooded by all these like authoritarian woke people. But like, I think it's just because you're choosing you're living in a battleground that's so overwhelmed by left-leaning spaces, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it could be definitely some of that. I think a part of the other issue is just that when somebody is partisan, doesn't matter what degree of partisan, just partisan, not saying one way or the other if it's extreme or not, they're more likely to excuse the excesses of their own bias and then hope and focus on the excesses of the other one.
Yeah, unlike us.
So I think that's partly what's going on here. I do it too. I
know. I know. I was
I know. I was just saying, clarifying for people that might not know me.
Sure.
But I think Adam, that's what's happening here. I think he's underestimating how much of the Republican and right of center people that he might associate. Maybe he doesn't associate with them. Maybe that's the other problem. But how many of those people there actually are?
What do you take of Kyle's point, which I thought, again, was well put? Like, okay, even if I accept the premise, which you could easily make the argument, that because, again, politics, or policy at least, is downstream of culture, and perhaps politics writ large is as well. But let's say because culture affects everybody, Kyle argues, number one, it's mostly superficial, whereas when authoritarian policy affects somebody, again, he gave the example of a woman who can't have, doesn't have access to an abortion pill. That is qualitatively, like, it's a much deeper intrusion on her rights with much more sweeping implications. Do you think that is a distinction worth noting?
I think,
because if Adam and Sitch say, listen, the left's culture war positions, it affects more people, and if we accept that is authoritarian, that means it's more authoritarian in scale. And Kyle says, okay, even if I accept it, the right's authoritarianism is much deeper in depth. What do you think?
I could easily dissuade this by saying I could point to a couple people who've killed themselves because of culture war bullshit, and who felt like they got canceled online. That porn star who said like she didn't want to hook up with a gay person or whatever, and then like she ran off of social media and killed herself. Like that. Seems like an extreme response, right? And that seems qualitatively just maybe not justice. I don't know. It's hard. I don't know if it's even okay for me to compare these situations, because people are dying in both. But I don't know if I doubt more people are dying from killing themselves due to cancellation and lack of access to Medicare and lack of access to healthcare and wealth, right? So I don't know. The qualitatively argument is a weird one. I don't know. I don't even know how to gauge it.
So you're sympathetic to Adam and Sitch.
I am a little bit. Little bit. And I know that's not surprising to you because I'm a secret conservative who jumps up.
You are. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. I would simply say, and maybe Kyle brings this up later, but the fact of the matter is, let's take that at face value, and let's say that there are instances where there's comparable depth. I would say, again, the right's authoritarianism is worse because it would be state directed, like the intrusion on your rights. In this case, like DeSantis passing a restrictive abortion bill. That is a publicly elected official weaponizing state power and it's state power being leveraged to intrude on your liberties.
For
Where, again, culture war transgressions occur. It's not Joe Biden doing it.
It's kind of like
Bernie Sanders.
Are you familiar with the difference between like act utilitarianism and rural utilitarianism?
Yes.
Where like it feels very similar to that degree. Okay, I'll just move on. I don't know.
Keep going. I'm listening. I had to let my DoorDash in the game.
No, yeah, it's basically like it's different from like we can look at the depths of the issues, but we can also look at not just how the depths of these issues, but how they create a domino effect and how they might create more and more harm if they were to be allowed. And I would agree that yes, it's not great when we excise people for communities that makes people feel very isolated. I agree. But if like that's like the most downstream effects for letting the culture war bullshit just like alone and in its worst case is pretty scary. But like I would say a fascist totalitarian state is probably infinitely more scary than whatever the other option is. So if I were to weigh those two options like downstream, I do agree with you, Josiah, that like state violence does matter more because they have access to infinitely more resources than even tens of thousands of people on their phones.
Well, and also and we'll let Cypher jump in here in a minute. I would also say the standard is also much higher and should always be higher on state actors
100%
than private citizens.
Of course.
So if a bunch of private citizens are being dicks to people via social media, even in a way that results in like a suicide, that's of course disgusting. But the standard of ethical performance for a private citizen versus an elected official, they're worlds apart. When you wield, it's the Uncle Ben ethic, the Spider-Man ethic. With great power comes great responsibility. Ron DeSantis has infinitely more power as the governor of Florida than just a random person on Twitter being a dick, even a group of random people on Twitter being a dick. Therefore, I'm not going to grade them on a comparable field or playing field. If you are a state actor on the right or the left, you should be scrutinized more. You should be held to higher standards more. And when you act in an overreaching or whatever way, it's worse than a private citizen or a group of private citizens doing so. Go ahead, Cypher.
Yeah, so just to kind of put a cap on this, and I think we probably could review the whole video later, finish it up, just mush the two together in an edit and put it up on YouTube or whatever. I think that Adam has a point, because a lot of people just seem so disconnected from politics and legislation that they are likely to feel as if they have more say when it comes to the cultural aspects of society rather than the political aspects of society. And I think that's a problem that we need to point out and like actually bring home to as anybody. I think this is right. This is a right wing, left wing, liberal center issue that people need to understand. Like, this is something I think everybody can agree on. Yeah. I also want to say that while yes, government is always worse, government isn't the only lever of power that we have. And this is a thing that lefties have been focused on forever. Corporations have power. People with wealth have power. Those people have an immense amount of sway over not only cultural issues, but also policy issues. And up until roughly 2008 or so, maybe 2012, corporations were more on the lines of where conservatives were culturally. I'm going to do a video on this. I'm going to talk about how Disney morphed from this Christian kind of pseudo good feeling, purity ring promoting network to what it is today, which is just another media conglomerate. And that switch for a lot of conservatives, like, oh shit, we're losing. And so I think that these are things that we have to also discuss. And I think that's not allowing people like Adam to like say these things, not saying that we are, none of us, but other people who do these things might be bad. It might have its own issues, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So again, I wish we had more time to unpack this. I definitely recommend that everybody check it out. And I'll send Stacks and Cypher the link as well, because this might be worth revisiting. This is one of those things. And Hunter, we ran into this last week. I think in the week before, we were doing this thing where we're trying to do 3 stories or whatever, 3 topics, like in 30-minute increments. But some of them like merit their own just by themselves.
And then we do
sometimes
it's hour 15 minutes on one, and we're like, fuck.
Well, because because there is so much to unpack here, and we barely scratched the surface. Like, again, so the thing is, I actually like Adam and Sitch in as much as because I like Connor as well. They frustrate me immensely because I think that
they have so much potential.
I won't say potential, but they're like, if you look at Sitch, I get along well with Adam on Twitter, but Sitch is the one I probably fight with the most. But Sitch has some really good. He's like the Hunter Biden laptop's a great example. He's clowning on the right, left, right, and center right now, where he's like, guys, shut the fuck up. Like, this is not what and he's getting it from like Rob Noor and others as well. But yeah, it's like, to me, it's that classic. You're stepping over $1 for the sake of a nickel. And to me, this conversation, as it unfurls, really emphasizes that quite a bit. Like, and Stacks, you made a really interesting point earlier. It's entirely possible that they're not being dishonest in the way that most people consider. It could be just a genuine, they just picked a point in the timeline of when to start, and it's not even occurring to them that you could really take it back further and go, oh, actually, no, this didn't begin with the woke movement as we understand it today, as Cypher made the case. It actually was the anti-woke of the Gingrich era or the Reagan era, or so on and so forth. Last thing to do here, just want to acknowledge some comments here. Joe Falcone says, they'll get him this time, you guys. You cannot mean tweet in a court of law. That's the guy we were talking about earlier who said that the Trump thing was... Hey, Joe, listen, hit us up, man. We would love to talk about this with you. 2 of us will just moderate if you want. If you want to take on Cypher or me or whoever. The door is open. We're happy to. And Cypher will even do it sober. He doesn't have to drink his vodka,
which is weird because we're so anti-freedom of speech. You wouldn't think that we would just allow you in, but we will.
Let's see some other things here. So. Conservatives love their football. It was definitely bigger than most people find politics boring, so get less attention. Yes, I agree with true. That, yeah. Alex O'Brien says woke as a pejorative is maybe an annoying minority. Actual wokeness, awareness of social injustice is an avenue to the common good culturally and should drive legislation when the public goes against the common good. I agree with that. That's how I use the word woke. And again, like every other social movement, especially vast social movements, can some people get really aggravating? Yeah. Like woke scolds are definitely aggravating. They annoy the hell out of me. I just choose not to fight against them because I save my public ire for conservatives who I find more dangerous. Let's see here. I'm older, and I can tell you the latest anti-woke mindset started with the dreadful Tea Party 2010.
It's interesting that we all have so many
Stacks,
different...
What do you think?
It's interesting that we all have so many different nexus points, and it's not surprising, right?
Yeah.
Because politics is like an ever increasing, or not ever increasing, but it's such a complicated subject that has so many different it's like a sine wave, it's got so many ups and downs. And I would also say that for me personally, the reason the one of the huge moments where I started getting really invested into politics was Trump election of 2016. That felt to me like such a huge, oh shit, I didn't realize how much this could matter, where fucking Trump could get elected. Oh my God, I need to start paying attention. And that to me was
happy you voted for him.
Exactly.
You're happy you voted for him.
Yeah,
Cypher, do you want to weigh in on that part?
We actually, whoever it was that said that, sorry, I didn't catch the name. We don't actually disagree. I just include Obama's election in the Tea Party movement. So during the primary and him being called, secret Antichrist, Muslim, communist, Manchurian candidate.
Tea Party was right off of. It was a reaction to Obama getting elected, essentially.
Yeah.
So Bronx LT says exactly. I work with bankers, and you can compliment a woman if she looks nice or whatever without being a creep about it. Let's grow up.
Yeah,
people.
the issue is it's not let's not talk about looks, or let's not joke, or let's not talk about politics. It's let's be a little bit aware of how people
maybe
feel.
Also make that not the first thing you say to a woman the first time you meet her in a professional context. Right. Maybe maybe actually develop a rapport and trust. Joan, interesting you chose Obama as a cutoff. I would have chosen Reagan, period. I wonder if that's because for both of us, is when we really began being right. And Cypher pointed that out, that you could easily take it back to the Reagan and Bork era. Let's see. Arkansas and Huckabee trying to put librarians in jail. Thank God it was just overruled by a judge. I've not been following that case. I think I heard a headline, something about, do you know anything about it, Cypher, offhand?
I don't, not offhand.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about librarians being put in jail.
Librarians.
That's what it says. I'm reading the comment.
Librarians.
I'm reading the comment.
I don't want to hear it. Listen, Diana Stacks is he's a conservative. He loves Trump, remember. Well, listen, folks, I'm glad we did this. I wish, in hindsight, we would have just done the Kyle thing, and Kyle and Krystal and Adam and Sitch, because again, I think there's just so much to unpack there. So, listen, follow Cypher on YouTube. It's Crowdsource Politics is the handle. Crowdsource Politics. He does like weekly breakdowns. Not of himself, but of the politics. Now, Stacks has weekly breakdowns, but those are just personal and psychological.
Yeah, I just record them and then upload them to my OnlyFans. Correct.
Yeah. He is, of course, Staxium's on YouTube. He did and Cypher, you should check this out too. He did a really good video called "Is a Hot Dog a Sandwich?" and it's basically a response to Matt Walsh's
What is a
Woman
yeah,
thing. It's really, really good.
It's a conversation about language, and I had a lot of good fun.
All
with
the good parts
stuff
were written by me. All the bad
he
stuff.
Didn't touch the project.
That's not even true. I gave him the idea, recommended that he dress up like a meth lab technician in the very beginning, as you did. Dude, you did. You look like somebody out of friggin' Breaking Bad with that.
That was the joke.
It was not the joke. He literally just got off work and ran in with his uniform on.
True.
But well, guys, we're gonna have to do this again. Stacks, I'll see you next weekend. Cypher, come back soon. We also need to pull Matt Leteviant from Destiny's channel and Falsers and some others.
He was at the Savannah event, right? I think I remember him.
Yes, he was. Yeah. So
I'll hit you up on Discord after this.
Cool.
Thanks so
All right,
much,
everybody.
everyone.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And Stacks, special thanks to you, buddy. Thank you for being a friend.
Thank you. I know you don't mean it,
he
but I'm
didn't
going to
say
take
it back.
it personally.
He didn't even say it back. You notice he was like, "Yeah, okay."
You're cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate I appreciate you allowing me to leech off of your fame and fortune.
My 25 concurrent
Hey,
viewers.
it's
more than we got.
I don't like to brag, folks.
Let's put this on.
Listen.
Yeah, we should go live soon. Do like a debate.
We do.
No, TikTok, so that we can put it on TikTok, and then I will finally get all my goddamn audience over here.
Yeah, I know. Cypher, are you on TikTok at all?
Not really. I put some videos on there, but
I'm even decently big.
I don't want to put TikTok on my phone, so I come back and upload
Just let
stuff.
them spy on you. What's the worst that could happen?
Considering I have Threads on my phone. That was stupid.
I don't know what the threshold is at this point, but it's like to get TikTok on desktop, you got to go. We had everything, but the fact that we hadn't gone live recently. But let me give the stats here to Cypher. That way he might be able to knock it out relatively quick. But then you can put it on. There's like a TikTok live studio, almost like OBS, and to restream.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's brand new.
But I do have a TikTok account. I just upload it from my computer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, smart. Well, it's taking forever to load, so I'll text them to you. I'll text the criteria. But yeah, all right, folks. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hope you have a nice day.